You know, this car's kind of a double-edged sword because the rear, like the engine, transaxle, whatever that you want to work on is super easy to work on because you just fold the clamshell up. Same with the front, you can get in anything. But if you have to get under the dash, it is absolutely terrible under here. I'll tell you what. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to Ran When Parked. I think this is going to be the last video on the Ultima GTR, at least for the time being. In the first video, we got it out of a 7-year abandonment, slumber, period of not running, whatever you want to call it. And we got it running good. In the second video, we got it running a little bit better. We sorted out some of the basic problems with it, and then we drove it a little bit just in the driveway and things to make sure the clutch works, make sure the brakes work, make sure the cooling system works, make sure everything works. That was a good test. However, it kind of exposed some problems, or at least some things that we're going to have to fix, or maybe not even fix, but address for the first time in this particular car before it gets driven on public roads. So in this video today, we're going to go through all the things that it needs to drive it on public roads, and then we're going to take it out on the road for the first time ever, because this car, it looks like the kit was ordered around like 01, 02. At least that's what the tags say under the rear clamshell here, as far as production dates. So I assume it was ordered sometime around then. It has never been on a public road before. It was driven in a parking lot about 7 years ago, and then it was driven in my driveway yesterday. So we're going to get it out on the road. We're going to put some miles on it, and that's going to be the first time ever. So to start off with, we're going to make this front clamshell fit appropriately. I think in the last video, I showed you guys that this side, the passenger side, sits really far away from the body, and therefore the tire actually hits the clamshell. That's a real easy adjustment with this heim joint right here. We just got to pull the whole thing in. It'll fit a whole lot better. And then we're going to start moving on to all the other stuff. Get the passenger seat bolted in, get harnesses in it, fabricate some tabs for these rear muffler hangers so they're not, just bouncing around back there. Making the passenger door latch. It doesn't latch right now. And then actually the rear clamshell we'll put back on it, and that doesn't latch either. So we're going to have to come up with latching for that. And then there's some crazy stuff going on with the latches in the front. Although the front clamshell does latch. That's really weird. So I'll show you guys that. We'll get it all sorted out. And then we're going to be driving this thing on the road, so let's get started. So there's the gap with it closed. Obviously it's way too big. You can see there that the bumper is way far away. It should like hit, and because of that, the latch is giving me a problem down in there. So let's pull it back up, we'll adjust it, make this thing perfect. Alright guys, so that's pretty much that. That was really simple. Obviously the bumper sets the spacer height, so we're all set. It's latched, everything's good. The alignment here is 1,000 times better. It's not perfect, but it's a whole lot better. And then over here is about the same. Maybe alignment's a little bit better on this side, but the spacer's exactly the same. So since it's latched, let me show you guys what I meant when I said the latch is weird. So obviously there's a latch on the passenger side and a latch on the driver's side. Now what you would do is hook one of these red handles to one side and then cable that side to the other side. But the previous owner did not do that. He actually hooked one to each side. So you have to pull this one, and then you also have to pull this one. Now the car came with two, I would presume, because one is for the rear clamshell and one's for the front clamshell. So we're gonna have to flip that around and make it so these latches work that way. Now the problem with that is that this one pulls in and this one pulls in. So I can't cable them together and make them both pull in. But what I realized is that the rear ones are reversed. These ones both pull in also. However, they're flipped 180 degrees. So what I really need to do is take one of the rear ones, put it on the front, take one of the front ones, put it on the rear. And then I could have a situation where, for example, in the rear, that one pulls in, this one pulls this way. And then I run the cable to right here, run a cable from there to over there. Then you pull the cable once, it unlatches both of them. So that's something that we're going to do at some point here before we drive it. But not the top priority right now. So now that we're done with the body panel alignment, I think we're gonna move on to the seats and harnesses. So let's see what's going on there. All right, so I emptied it out. The passenger seat was already unbolted, so I just yanked it out. And just as a side note, this kind of shows how basic these things are. Like, there's nothing going on in here. It's just the tub, 4 bolts for the sliders, and that's all you get. It's pretty Spartan, and I think that's what I love about this car. But something that's really interesting, these are the factory seats that came with it, and they have these funny little things, and this is lumbar support. So you can run this to like the center, and you can pump this up, and maybe you can see it on camera, the freaking lumbar comes out. It's pretty wild. I mean, I don't know why you'd use it, but I guess it's kind of cool, right? Anyway, onward. So another sign of when this thing was ordered roughly is these belts have a 2003 manufacture date. So again, a little more evidence that the car was ordered around 01, 02, 03 region, you know, because the belts might have come in after. So anyway, made in England, like everything else on the car. Impossible to replace, probably. So this looks like it's going to be relatively simple because the car is made for 5-point harnesses. So it already has your harness mount tabs for the shoulders. It does not have one for the floor, but I can pop that in, and then you just put a gigantic fender washer or plate under there. And I don't think it has ones for the side harnesses either, which is kind of surprising. Or maybe it does. There's a bolt hole right there, so, and right there. So that's probably those two. I'm surprised it doesn't have the submarine strap, but anyway, we're going to start mounting these things up. We'll get the passenger seat back in, and then we'll switch and go to the driver's side. All right, guys, so harnesses are in, and like I said, it doesn't have a mounting point already for the submarine harness that goes, you know, between your legs. And I thought I'd be comfortable with it just being a 4-point, but now I see why people don't do this and why actually the DOT doesn't allow this, because you could just like submarine under this thing in an accident pretty easily. It doesn't really hold you from like sliding under. So it's a little unnerving, to be honest with you. I thought it'd be fine. So I'm going to have to drill some holes and mount those, the crotch straps they're called, which come, there's 2 of them actually, and they come between your legs and up, and they hit here and here when you strap this thing in. So we're going to have to install those, but for now it's good enough. I was going to drive it with no seat belts, so I'm glad I at least have something. So let's move on to the next stuff. All right, so now that we have a passenger seat in and we have harnesses in, the next thing is going to be this door latch. Now, I was just messing with this thing, and like I showed you before, it doesn't latch no matter what you do. And I had thought that it probably just wasn't going far enough into the latch to make it work. But now I just realized that if you look really closely, I don't know if you can see that on camera, but the bar actually isn't engaging the latch. So, in other words, either the latch needs to come out that way or the bar needs to come out that way. The latch needs to come out that way, or the whole door needs to move back, because that gap is a whole lot larger than the driver's side gap, this one, and this one works perfectly fine. Now, what I just noticed when I was looking at it is on this side, the hinge back here is perfectly level with the body. You can see it's bolted in flat. On this side, there's a couple washers right in there. So the hinge is being spaced backward, which is pulling the whole door backward. So I think what we probably need to do is take those bolts out and remove at least one of those washers, bring the whole door back, and that'll probably solve that problem. So I have no idea why it was put together that way, but it was. So here we go. Let's see if we can get this right. So this worked out infinitely better than I thought it would. This side is absolutely perfect. Doesn't move around at all. It's tight against the seals. A really good positive latch, which made me start thinking about the other side, which I've already taken apart, so I can't already show you guys, but it like bounced around. Like it would latch, but it shook and stuff, which kind of sucked. So I just took this bar out, and I see that someone already tried to kind of get it dialed in. You know, they ground it out a little bit. So I'm just going to grind this down a little bit more so I can lower that latch bar, and then we'll put this one back together. Alright guys, so we're all done with that, and it is so much better. Beautiful. It latches solid, doesn't move around. It sits level with the rest of the body. I love it. Perfect. Totally worth it. Now all I really have to do is put a bigger washer on or fill that gap with epoxy or something. There's a bunch of different ways to fix that. For now, I'm just going to enjoy the fact that it doesn't flop around anymore. So, job well done. Alright, so we got the driver's door all sorted out. I'm super happy with it. That's awesome. Next thing is, I realized the other day, maybe I already mentioned this, but I'll mention it again, that one of the problems with the shifter is not actually the shifter, it's the clutch. And that is that I don't think it moves enough fluid to actually disengage the clutch all the way. And the reason why is that if you run it and you put the clutch in, you put it in first gear, it starts trying to creep forward and it won't go into gear. So we're going to have to get under there, and I'll probably start with pedal travel. Obviously, I could bleed it a little bit more and see if there's some air in it, but I just don't think there is. So it doesn't have much pedal travel. I think it's going to be pedal travel. Now, I got to crawl under the dash, unfortunately, and do this. So I got every wrench I could possibly need to do that. And, unfortunately, we're just going to have to get under there and do it, which is going to suck, but here we go. Alright guys, so the clutch situation is very, very annoying. So I climbed under the dash, as you saw. I adjusted the pedal travel out, the stopper on the back of the clutch pedal, all the way. I started it up, put the clutch all the way down, and it starts shaking like crazy, which I now realized immediately is the fingers on the clutch pushing all the way into the flywheel. So no damage done, it's okay, but even at the point where it's just about to hit, so it's not making noise yet, you can't get it into gear. So I'm assuming it's a brand new clutch and maybe I just have to drive it around a little bit. So what I've done is I bled it as much as possible, and I've adjusted the stop on the back of the pedal to the point where it just barely doesn't hit the bolts on the flywheel. So everything's fine, but it's maximum pedal travel, or maximum, clutch slave travel, that is to say. So it's as good as it's going to get. I'm just going to have to drive it around a little bit and see what happens. So in the meantime, we're going to start working on this muffler bracket situation. So this piece of sheet metal, which is a pretty cool piece, was like right up against this rear bar. So what I did was I loosened up the clamps on the mufflers. I pushed them back as far as they could go. Now I have a little bit of clearance. It's sitting where it should. So I'm going to start with this aluminum block, and I'm just going to make a simple bracket that just bolts right into the frame there and then comes up and captures that so we can bolt that way. I'm going to make two symmetric, one on each side, and that's going to be the end of that problem. And that'll bring us into the home stretch on this thing. So let's fire up the mill over there, grab our chunk of billet aluminum, and start machining. Okay guys, so we got our brackets all machined out and installed. Looks good in there, everything's tight, works perfect. Now you'll notice that the rear cover is back on the car too. And that is because I put it on, not on camera because the batteries were dead in the camera. And I actually got it to latch and everything works perfect. So the car is all back together. And in fact, I actually drove the car yesterday. And we had some problems with it. So I didn't have it on camera because all the GoPros were dead and my father was in town, so I decided I would just fire it up. We'll take it around on the road. We drove it 3-4 miles, and unfortunately I don't think I'm going to be taking it out on the road again, at least immediately, and that is because I had a few problems. For one, that clutch problem came back again. That is not gone. I've been doing some research and I found that in a lot of cases with these adapter plates, there isn't actually enough space for the clutch to disengage in there, so you have to get in there and modify the clutch fork. So for that, unfortunately, sounds like the transaxle is going to be coming out of this thing. That'll probably be a later episode. The other problem that happened is that when I got back, the car was sounding terrible. I got out of it and it clearly wasn't running on all 8 cylinders, but as I was sitting there looking at it and listening to it, it started running on 8 cylinders again. So I don't know if maybe the injectors are clogged, some stuff got kicked up because it was sitting so long, or maybe like the foam in the tank got sucked up into the injectors a little bit and clogged them up. I'm not really sure what the situation is there. The good news is it was smoking before, and I thought that was maybe a stuck ring, and after beating on it on the road a little bit, it was actually a stuck ring, and well, I assume it was a stuck ring, and it's not smoking anymore. So one good thing, 2 bad things. That's what happens when you shake down a project like this, so I can't say I'm surprised. So that's going to be about it for now. We will be working on this car more on the channel. I'm going to take a little break from it because I really got to get back to working on the Land Cruiser for my wife, and also we have some work to do on the Evil 7 over here. So that's going to be it for today. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and actually definitely comment, because I just found out recently that's the best way to get the algorithm to notice you on YouTube. So comment, tell me what you're thinking. I'll see you guys next time on Ranwood Parked.